I would say I am one of those people who didn't get into UX with a UX portfolio. I didn't have any.
We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. So, how did you get into UX if you did not have a portfolio? All right, Amit Shetty. Good to have you here, finally, Amit. And welcome to Detox, the design podcast. It's, I think, roughly been 1.5 months or 2 months now
I
that
think
we
it's
met.
been 3 months. I think somewhere
Really? It's
around,
been three
yeah,
months.
more than that actually. I think September or October, somewhere around, we had our
Oh,
event,
wow.
and then it's been chaos, and
Yeah.
I know how you're reading, but I'm so glad to be on your platform, and I would like to say this is my first podcast I'm ever appearing on. So
Really?
yeah, like I
Wow.
have I've done online workshops, but have never been on podcast. I have always thought how it would be, but and then there you are, you say that appear on guest. I'm like, yes, I
I
want
am
to do
so
it.
happy that I'm getting you all to one of the podcasts. I'm sure many of them will follow because, see, when I spoke to you that day, and then so we've been connected on LinkedIn, right? Afterwards, and then
Yeah,
I've been seeing, and so the very first post after we met, and then that I saw on LinkedIn was the top 100 mentors
yeah.
on ADP list for that year. I mean, there are some 8,000
Now
about.
15, I think somewhere around about 12,000 last I remember.
Wow. So about 12,000 all over the world, mostly design mentors on ADP list.
Yeah.
And then you happen to be one of the top 100 most impactful mentors. And you've contributed over, I think, 3,000 plus minutes. And you've
Yeah.
recently hit a
At 100
century of
sessions.
sessions
Yeah.
also, right?
Yeah. Yesterday itself it happened. And that's the fun part, right? Like I would say it was such an unexpected thing for me to start mentorship. Right.
Right.
I still can't call myself a mentor because I'm like, I am still learning. What am I going to
Mm,
teach people? Like, I don't know what is happening.
right.
Right. That's the fun part. But yeah, like those conversations and talking to people, that's just
Yeah, yeah,
the I
absolutely.
think I am more outspoken on these platforms than I'm in my personal life, I would say.
No, guys, I think the very first meeting, like the only time that we met, it was such a friendly approach that you have, and you're super approachable and super easy to speak to. And I think I was just going through your reviews that people have left on your ADP
ADP.
profile, and I see this there also. You're super approachable. So I see where this is coming from,
No, so one of my approaches has always been like when I
Mm,
talk to people, it's more about everyone has their own worries, everyone
yeah,
has their life they live beyond these screens,
right.
right? But when you meet, right, it's has to be that you meet as a person, you meet them as a friend, you understand what is the issue, why they are
Right.
coming in, and that's where the conversation starts, the connection, what
Mm,
we talk about, right? It's in a day of in a day and age where
mm.
you we run behind followers and subscribers.
Yeah,
Somewhere we feel that connection is lot, and
yeah.
we are in an industry of designing for humans, and if we don't connect with humans, how are we supposed to design?
I know, right? I know. That's, I think, the fundamental logic behind everything connecting with designers. I think I was just having a conversation with one of my friends. Uh, Her name is Uma. She was on the podcast previously,
Mm-hmm.
and she's now a visiting faculty at NID and NIFT. So we were just having a conversation about the exact same thing, connecting with the people, with the humans. It's always, I happened to be at a founders meet yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one investor. Okay, I'll tell you a simple example. So after the session, you know who people wanted to speak to was, right? The
Yeah.
investor, of course, the investor, right? Everybody wanted to speak, and there were 40 to 50 founders
Mm-hmm.
pitching to the same investor one by one, and that person was so drained, and it was quite evident, the way she was, her body language and everything. And I said, I'm not here to pitch, or I don't want your money. I'm here to give you a glass of water. Do you want one?
And like that's such a basic human etiquette, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where, and this reminds me that recently, right, I've been a
Hmm.
lot looking into focus and how human minds, and I just started listening to this audiobook called The Lost Focus.
Okay.
Like, okay. And this artist, like this writer, I heard him on, one of Steve Bartlett's
Hmm.
podcast called The Diary of CEO, and he was talking about how as humans we have lost the ability of focusing.
Right.
It's like we all feel that we are spending so much time on screens and mobiles.
Right.
It's not at a personal level, it's such a systematic
Hmm.
problem, it's at a global level, it's not
Yeah.
only you suffering. And that's where he talks about that how he went for a digital detox
Yeah.
altogether. Like he scrapped his iPhone and he took a phone which barely has any, I don't think so it has even internet, and he just took his like iPod with musics and podcast, and a laptop which
Hmm.
doesn't have like ability to connect to internet, and he went to like end of USA, and
Oh,
he
wow.
went there the first day. He went to the sea and he just stood there looking at the sea, and he doesn't remember how much time he spent.
Oh, wow.
And the day that day describes, right, he came back, he just went to sleep, he slept for 15 hours, he
Oh,
woke up,
wow.
like he was like, I was in a daze, I was in a euphoria kind of thing, and he lived like that for a week.
Wow.
So I've just reached that much part. I
Wow.
have to listen more, but
Wow.
that's the thing, right? Like
Mm.
focus, human connecting, having empathy. We all talk about empathy, but
Yeah.
it's not just products. And that's where people say that, hey, UX is a career. But
Yeah.
if you actually look at
Mm.
UX is a term that has come up in last 20 years, I would say.
Mm.
People were still designing. It's all about the whole human life is about experience.
Yeah.
The evolution is about experience.
Absolutely.
The societies have been built on experience, and what we are doing is we are just designing a part of experience.
Mm.
That there's a very fun, or I would say I find it fun, but it's a very like a tacky statement
Mm-hmm.
where in medical term
Mm-hmm.
users are called who are use like they are addicted to a medicine. Like they are addicted, you are a user of this substance, you are a user of this substance, right? Because what a user means, you're constantly using it, and using it comes from that.
Yeah.
Right, like I
Wow.
know I'm
Okay.
going to speak a lot of controversies, but that's the fact. Like it's not fun and games, it's
Yeah.
always there's a lot going on in the
Right.
industry, beyond industry.
Right.
But that's where that fun part is, y- creating experience. Like I think you met Pratima when you
Mm.
came to
Yeah.
office, and her, like she is like the inspiration for me, and the way she takes, and she always talks about that doesn't matter what you do, you are
Mm.
setting up an event, you are working with a client, you are going to gift someone or meeting someone, it's your responsibility to create an experience, because that's
Right.
what people are going to remember,
Hmm.
right? And she always pushes us to create that unique experience. Like we can all do okay, whatever general aspect is, but how do you go one step beyond, how do you make that connect, is something very important.
Very interesting points made, Amit. Boys and girls, here is Amit Shetty, lead UX designer of Divami Design Labs, Hyderabad. And he's been into design for about 3 years, roughly about 3 years, into UX.
E- 3.5 years now, yeah.
3.5 years, yeah. And he is coming from a very diverse background, which I want to talk about, because he's done animation, he's done mass communication, And then,
and masters in animation, like
yeah,
PGDM in
exactly.
animation. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm just imagining, like, what is the thought process behind all of this? How did you switch from animation to UX and then now mentoring? What is happening? How did this happen? Come on, tell me.
So I'll tell you, I was a typical, like, born and brought up in Mumbai. So I
Mm,
come from Mumbai, like,
mm.
I stay in Thane, like that's not technically Mumbai, but not a people know Thane because, well, Mumbai is the closest. So I tell that, okay, Thane is where I
No, but
stay.
Thane is nice. Actually, I like Thane better than Mumbai.
Yeah. Like I live near like the Air Force area. So
Oh, okay.
I have like, it's developed, lot more developed now. Earlier it was like more like there was forest and all, but yeah.
Right.
So born and brought up in Mumbai, and
Mm,
typical Indian parents. Like my dad, I grew up in a chawl. Like we
mm.
were living in chawl. My dad was like till my age standard. My dad decided, you know what, I'm not gonna bring up my kids in a chawl. I want to upgrade their life. So we shifted to apartments in my ninth standard, I think. And from there, he had certain expectation that, hey, you know what, my son will be an engineer. Like typical Indian
Typical.
story, right?
Yeah, typical.
And I was the type of student, like I was an average student. I was not like ranking top or something. I would study in school itself whenever the teacher is teaching. Yeah, you study
Right.
whatever they. I would never study at home. My
Mm.
parents forced me to go to two tuitions because they knew I will never study at home. Right? Like, and somehow like 10th I passed and got into science, and then I did 12th. And I wanted to get into automobile. Like I found it interesting because
High
I
five
would
there.
say I would say because I'll tell you why.
Uh,
Because I was always a fan of cartoons,
mm.
and I loved watching cartoons and anime. And one of my favorite things was Power Rangers
Oh,
to
yes.
watch.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And their power up suits, their bikes and their vehicles, and the Megazords.
Oh,
I was like,
oh,
that
yes.
was an inspiration. You had those, and then Beyblade, and all of these things, right? And I
Yes.
was like, okay, what is the closest thing I can get to do? Okay, I can maybe do automobile.
Mm.
I passed my 12th like with average 65% something, and I gave like CET. I didn't study. I would say I didn't study
Mm.
that seriously. Like, okay, because I was like, okay, let's see where it goes.
Right.
All the rankings came in, everything. And there are those admission rounds, right? So
Yeah.
round one went. I gave AI triple E, and with fluke, I got like 72, positive 72. I was like happy. I was like, whoa.
Oh, wow.
Like that's a big deal. Like getting positive 72 is big. But
Yeah.
for I would say my luck, I don't know what. With every cutoff round,
Huh.
ideally the cutoff decreases. But
Hmm.
here for AI triple E, it kept on increasing.
How is that?
I was like, I don't know. So, it was three rounds, and then somewhere in between, I
Mm.
found out that from one of my friend that, hey, there's a animation degree course that has been launched,
Mm.
like by Mac, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
he was like, it's a 3 years degree, and one of my friend had gone to enquire, and he had told me, and I was thinking, why can't I do animation?
Right.
And then it was one day where I was just discussing with my dad, and he was like, you know what, we will get an admission into an engineering college with donation and all. Right. That's it. And I still remember this day that we left from our house in the morning to go to a bank to, not go to a bank, I think to travel to the college to talk about the admission.
Mm.
And on the way, almost I would say some 5-6 kilometers away from house, near a bridge, my dad stopped the bike and asked me, what do you want to do exactly? I
Oh.
said, you know what, whatever donation amount you are going to pay for engineering, I can do my animation degree 3 years of that. And I
Mm.
feel I want to do animation. And that moment, we went to the bank, we got a DD for the
Wow.
admission process of animation. And that's
Wow.
how I got into animation.
Wow. Kudos to uncle. I was just about to say something like पैसे ज़्यादा दे दूंगा but engineering ही करेगा. But
No,
it's not like that.
yeah, the whole point is like, see, my dad comes from a, I would say he's like the youngest of 13 siblings. Like he's been born and brought up in
Wow.
like a small town in Karnataka, and he
Wow.
ran away from home at the age of 15. Right, he
Crazy.
came to Mumbai and he started living like on the streets, and then slowly got a job in some small factory.
Wow.
And that's where he felt, right, he had done like barely 10th pass, and that's where he has always been my role model,
Wow.
because he works in the garment, he's working in the same company for last 35 years.
Wow.
The
Wow.
place where he started just from, I would say sweeping, now he's
Mm.
handling the whole, it's been handling the whole production department for,
Wow.
I don't know how many, like 15 years, more than 15 years now. So
Amazing.
and that's where like I had seen, you know right now we talk about the 9 to 7, like nine to
Yeah.
five, that life, that okay, work life lives. I've seen my dad, you know going early morning, traveling like 20-25 kilometers from home, coming back late at night, or
Mm.
sometimes spend nights, because it's a manual labor, it's a production, and I have heard him screaming and cussing on the
Right.
calls,
Right.
because we know how difficult that part
Yeah.
is. But he has always been the inspiration for it.
Wow.
I've seen people drive, like I didn't need to look out for inspiration of working, and he always had that work ethic, that you do something, you do with
Mm.
full honesty and full
Mm.
commitment.
Mm.
And that's where, when I started my animation, let's say,
Mm.
it was not a typical college life, I would say, because I was part of, it was with Maya Academy of Advanced Cinematics, Mac, right?
Mm.
It's all over. So earlier they used to have these smaller courses where you,
Right.
like, private diplomas. So that was, I think, 29 2009, sorry. So
Mm.
2009 was the first year of them collaborating with IGNU to launch a 3-year degree course for animation.
Okay.
So I was the first batch, I think, in India to get a BA AVFX. So there was no degree like that before it, right? And and I would say, like, in our branch, we were
Uh,
like only 4 people.
oh
And
wow.
and the fun part is, I am like, who was about to go into engineering. My
Mm.
other friend who finished first year of engineering and came and joined. Then another friend who finished 3 years of engineering and left and came. And then we had another person, all from science, like one lady. And it was such a fun time, I would say. Like,
Wow.
we just literally lived in our classes. Like, we used to
Mm.
have like alternate days classes, and for since it was a distance learning, so we used to have, like, go to colleges and give exams, and that's how it was. So 3 years went by. Like, I studied, like, After Effects, Photoshop, all the Adobe suite in the first 6 months, I would say.
Mm.
Like, when people talk about, Adobe CC right now,
Mm.
Photoshop, I'm like, I started using Photoshop when it was CS2. It was not even cloud. This is like
Wow.
2009. Now, like 14 years back, I learned Photoshop.
Wow. Wow, that's a long time ago because I started with CS5. I started with CS5 back in the day.
Yeah, at that point of time, I think you also started CS5. We didn't know there was UI UX. We knew something. Okay, there's something called web development. There's
Mm.
something called web
Yeah.
design, where you need to know coding. You need to know HTML or Java,
Mm.
right? And that was not something which was part of our course. Our course was whole related to, CGI, making 3D, and animation, all around it, VFX.
Mm.
And I specialized in VFX. Like, I used to like make things blow up and like that. And I would say 2012, I think
Mm.
that's when Life of Pi was released, if
Yeah, I
I'm correct.
think so. Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember. And animation industry was going on a
Mm.
downfall at that point of time,
Okay.
because studios were closing down. And
Mm.
I finished my uh, college, and did the whole show reel, and I was home for 2 months. I was just sitting. And one thing I would say, best part of work in animation was, I would sit and play games or watch movies. My parents would come. I'm saying, I'm studying. This is what I want to do. And this is what I did.
Wow.
2 months, I would say. And but in between, I was going around and we were making like short films and all of that. And one day I got a call, like some friend of dad's somewhere said that, hey, there's an agency in Andheri, and they are looking for some motion graphics artists. And I said, like, I can do motion graphics because I've learned After Effects. I know good. And that's where my first job went in, like, like first job in advertising. Like I used to do like small time, I would say
Yeah.
job, like part-time things to, being a invigilator in the classes. Like you
Right.
have these 10, 12 students, we used to go distribute papers, make sure they do the paper, and we used to get paid hourly. That was like my first job. but in the 3 years of animation, I didn't do any freelance at that point of, and freelance concept was not so popular because
Yeah.
you need contacts at that point
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We were not so connected that we are today, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's where I got in. Like the first day I went for the interview, they gave me a test. As soon as my test was done, I was hired on the spot. And because they liked my skill on After Effects, and my first job was basically, there were this set of videos for an insurance company which were shot in Hindi and English. My first job was take those videos, take the different edits of the videos, replace the English or Hindi content with Hindi, Gujarati,
Oh,
Tamil,
okay.
Malayalam. So we used to get like script that, okay, this is the script, this is the word, you need to replace it exactly. That was my first job. Like I
Right.
think at that point of time, we did somewhere around like 180 videos. That was the whole team.
Wow.
And we had a team, like I was working with this company called Twist in the Tail Studios. It is part of Think Why Not Group. They
Okay.
still do a lot of corporate, and that's where I got exposed to a lot of corporate work. So we
Right.
used to work with like brands like ICICI and Kotak Mahindra, all these brands to do their event films, in-house communication, all that. And that's also where I did my first, I think, television show. It was for a travel show on a Marathi channel where I did like, I actually, like, there was someone who already established the graphics and all. So I used to make the coming soon part, like after,
Right.
just before the break, you used to get those smaller parts. I think in the generation of Netflix, people don't know what coming
Yeah.
soon is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming
Yeah.
next is that you used to get, okay, glimpse of what will happen after the break. Right. I used to
True.
do those and the first title sequence because each episode was different location. So
Right.
that has to be incorporated. And
Right.
that's where the journey began. So I did that. I did like, okay, after 1 year, I wanted to again switch to 3D. I was like, I've been doing motion graphics, but I always had that thing for 3D. And one of my friends said, hey, I have joined this studio. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to join it, even if they're paying me low.
Right.
And I resigned from my job. And just before, I would say, just 10 days before my last day at office, I got a news that, hey, this studio is not so working well because they are not paying salary out there. And I'm like, okay. So I have already put my resignation. So,
Right.
I left my job. I was at home for a while. And then one of my like that time, project managers, he had started his own firm a few months
Okay.
before I left. So he called me up and he called me for a freelance gig. I said, you know what, see, I want to get into 3D. So I would do a freelance for you, and but anytime if I get an opportunity, I'll move on. And he was okay with that. And that's where I worked, right? I worked with home films and multimedia. And that's where, you know, I learned a lot because it was a small team. It was, my project manager who was running the business, and I was doing all the After Effects, all the templates and everything. And then we had one editor, and I
Right.
used to also do edit. So that's where I experienced that startup life, that okay, it's a small team and you get to do a lot. Like I would say, we used to literally go in office. Like I remember we used to do this event, like I think Mumbai used to have this event on 1st of April, like because for them it's the financial year start, right?
Right.
and their regional manager, I think that point of time, he used to always want to motivate his team. So he used to, make like do interviews with, like, these are all internal communication, right? I don't know people even know that these things happen
Yeah.
behind the ground, because people just know that, okay, there's advertising, there's filmmaking, but
Right.
there's so much, corporate content happens in agencies that, that's a altogether a different landscape
Yeah.
in advertising,
Yeah.
right? And that's where things went. Like, we used to go to office and we used to literally stay in their office for 2 days, 3 days. Like, we used to
Yeah.
go, we used to take our systems, because we were a small team,
Yeah.
right? And we wanted to show that, hey, we are working on. So the regional head used to come in like after their work hours and check that, okay, how is coming. We'll show the demo and they will give us correction.
Yeah.
So we have like, I'll be sitting on fixing all the templates. I'll have like other editor who's working on the main film, which is like 20 minutes, 30 minutes long. And it used to be like, sports theme. Okay, this year's theme is sports. So we used to source footages, from YouTube
Right.
and all, like cricket and everything, right? And we
Right.
used to pull in and build up those story. Like, there used to be story. There were like, the whole idea was to motivate the team for the
Mm.
next financial year. Like,
Mm.
yeah, this year, we targeted like 1 crore or 5 crores of revenue. Next year is 10 crores. That's the
Right.
plan.
Right.
And that's where I, got that sense of experience we talk
Mm.
about,
Mm.
right? The regional manager, he just wanted to create an experience for his whole team to get them moving. And that
Mm.
experience was, to uplift their spirits. And that's the power of media. You don't realize that, you know unknowingly it simulates a certain part of your brain, your heart. It just moves you. Like, you watch a good film, you just feel like, so good, like coming out. You watch a dark film, you will be messed up, right? It's so much at a psychological level, and that's ingrained in our DNA, I would say. Because if you see cavemen, they started by drawing wall paintings. It
Yeah.
was not art, it was a form of communication,
Yeah.
to communicate, to
Yeah.
address, because there was no language at that point of
Mm.
time. It was just pictorial, right? And that was one experience thing. And
Right.
that's the first thing. And then, I got into, as like, one of my friend had gone to Bangalore for masters, and I was like, you know what, I would also want to do masters. And my dad was like, yeah, that's fine. If you want to do, that's okay, I'll
Yeah.
support you. And that's where I've been glad for my parents, right? Like, he's been always supportive, and
Yeah.
anytime decision. And that's where I've met a bunch of, all these people who have been my close friends.
Mm.
Like, I was in animation, and I would say, like, I did my masters in NICC Bangalore. So we used to have this co-ed hostel,
Mm.
right? And our college was like a small bungalow around in Hennur area.
Okay.
If you wouldn't even know it's a college, but yeah,
Huh.
it was a small institute. And we used to live like in a co-ed hostel, and my hostel room was biggest. Right? I would say one of the peculiarities of our hostel was none of the rooms were same size, because it was a weirdly structured way. So I
Okay.
would say that. So since my room was biggest, it was like a party room also. So weekends were chill times, but that's where I met friends from different batches, and even faculties. Some of the faculties who were young, they used to also stay with us. So we used to interact, right?
Mm.
So that's where I learned more on the theory part.
Mm.
Like, since in my bachelor's, I learned like software, because it was like driven by,
Mm.
more like, it was a software teaching institute. They
Yeah.
used to teach theory at a certain level,
Yeah.
but more dependent on practicality.
Mm.
But at my master's, I understood, hey, there's you need to understand what is the foundation of things, how things came to be. When we call, history of art, history of
Mm.
design, there's a reason people refer to it,
Right.
because there's so much treasure hidden in it that you won't even understand that, what you do today, which you feel like is very simplistic, was someone's dream like 50 years back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
right? Like
Absolutely. Yes.
that.
I mean, the thought itself is so, I mean, it's powerful in a way because somebody thought about this and we are actually living in it because he thought about it or they thought about it. They worked for it and they created it for us.
I would say if you check out, 1970s and 80s or somewhere around 60s when we had the first moon landing. I
Yeah.
think it was 40s somewhere, but yeah, in
Mm.
that era you had these artists who had painted their futuristic vision, like in 2020
Yeah.
how the world would look like,
Yeah. 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 I've seen those. Yeah.
right? Like the flying cars and these
Yeah.
retro, like you still
Yeah.
had that retro feel but the futuristic, like. And that's
Exactly.
where I don't know if you remember the cartoon Jetsons.
Absolutely. I loved it.
Right, like Jetsons, like you had Jetsons and Flintstones that were
Yeah.
running at the same time, and you could see what a past was.
Yeah.
Yet the past was also kind of futuristic because their tech was also very, like when I used to watch Flintstones, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
dinosaurs could be used like that. We never knew.
Yeah. Exactly.
And Jetsons, and that's where I see that people had a vision.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
not about that you just someday wake up and it happens. No, it's
Yeah.
a vision. People move towards it.
Yeah.
Though that not all the visions are successful right now. I would say people thought flying cars would be there, but we have dog filters and coming in. That just every day we invent like hundreds of filters and post.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, flying cars, I think the closest that we've come to is VTOL jets, vertical takeoff and landing jets.
Yeah,
And yeah, flying taxis somewhere in Dubai. I think Middle East Uber came up with it, and then Airbus was working on something similar. But yeah, I think it's interesting space. There's still a lot more to come there. Uber also invested in some of the things. I think Uber Elevate was the
I think Uber has in Bangalore. They have Uber. I think helipad. Basically, when
oh,
you get
okay.
out of Bangalore airport,
Okay.
you can book a helicopter. I
Oh.
think from Bangalore airport to I think Electronic City, because
Oh.
that's like another end, and it's like
Yeah.
a 2 hour drive. Like it's completely. So for all these big delegates who come
Yeah.
from abroad and
Yeah. Yeah.
who
Yeah.
come from like IT company, right? So
Hmm.
I think they started this service, and they used to be like,
Nice.
I think one seat was like 4,000 bucks something.
It's not bad actually for them.
Yeah, like for them, yeah. I'm
It's
like
not
for us, no.
bad. Yeah, not
But
for us,
yeah,
but yeah, for
yeah,
them it's not bad.
yeah. Like that was, I think, at that point of time. So it used to take you directly to Electronic City. You get to skip the whole
Wow,
traffic
the
and
traffic. Yeah,
get
I
it.
mean,
You
imagine
could get
he's
there.
somebody's landing at what 9 o'clock in the morning and then having to
Yeah,
travel to Electronic City would take them at least, yeah, what they'll reach at lunch or something.
yeah. So they used to have like on the go meetings and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where we see, right? Like these
Hmm.
innovations happen, the technology and all. And
Hmm.
as I was saying, when I got exposed in my masters,
Hmm.
the theory aspect, like the faculties used to teach us, and I
Right.
used to go around books. And then I had these people, like I was in animation, so my assignments used to be different. I
Hmm.
had my friends who were in visual communication
Right.
in, right? And the fun part is, like, I used to always do my assignments at the last moment. I used to be around helping other people because I'm like, yeah, my thing I know how to do. Like, I need to make an animation, I need to make a video, I can make it. I have 2 years of work experience. I can polish it, and that's how I was always, the last moment guy. And I
Hmm.
still sometimes regret it because it doesn't work always. Especially when you work in UX, nothing works, nothing can be done at last moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
a helpful thing, I would say. And
Actually,
I agree.
I'm going to ask a question here
You
because
can.
I mean, for somebody to, I totally relate to that because even I am sort of wired that way because there are a lot of common things in what you have gone through and what I have gone through. So I want to ask a question here. When you say that you were totally doing things at the very end, and now UX is structured, right? It is structured step by step. It has to be done. It has to be that way because If not, then you end up risking a lot, right?
I can't agree more with you because
Yeah.
I'll tell you, like after I finished my master's,
Mm.
I worked with a studio for 6 months and then I went back to Mumbai
Mm.
and I joined like one of my contacts in again, I joined a startup. Like it was a small team, it was just two of us. And I used to work on, title sequences, trailers, all these things. Like I used to work with clients like Z and a lot of regional films at that point of time. So I used to make title sequences, motion posters. So it was all a visual and promotional. Everything had to have a sense of storytelling. People
Mm.
don't know what is happening behind the scenes. There's a
Yeah.
video that is released, you just see the video, you enjoy it, and you go,
Yeah.
right? But behind the scene, it's done. Someone has to work on After Effects, jump between Premiere, coordinate with
Yeah.
editors, and get the music run around here. So I did that for 3 years, like
Mm.
almost 3 years, like somewhere around. And as I was doing that, right, like it was fun. Like it was such an amazing experience working with it. I'm still contact like with my Xbox, and he's a good friend of mine, and we still contact. And it was such an amazing experience. Like I could get to meet like film stars and film release. You could see, like, to see your name on the silver screen in
Yeah.
the credits. That's like nothing can stop it. Like people used to say that, okay, what kind of work you do. I used to that time say, hey, to see my work you have to buy a theater ticket and go and watch it.
Nice, cool way of doing it.
Yeah, but that's where, like, that was one of the proudest moment. But somewhere I realized, like, that lifestyle I was living, right?
Ah,
Like I'm still young, but at that time I was like somewhere around, let's say, 24, 25 at age.
right,
All right. And I used to stay in the studio for like a week. I used to go home, just get my change of clothes and stay there.
right.
Work was good, people were good, but somewhere I felt that there was a mismatch between, maybe this is not something I want to do my whole life.
Mm. Mm.
And that's where somewhere I came in, what, I need a change. And that's how
Mm.
I decided to switch
Mm.
from films, but I never had an intention of UX, I would say.
Okay. I'm going to quickly stop you here
Yeah.
and say, because see, the journey that I've seen is that I'm now taking you back to the motorcycle that you were on with your dad.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, okay, and then you're saying that I want to do animation. And then let's say 7 years down the line, and you realize that okay, this is not something that I want to do. Right? You've invested your bachelor's time, you've invested a couple of years working after that, or maybe more than that, and then you have done 2 years of masters, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Then you have worked 3 years more. So you have a few years that you've spent already.
Total, I would say almost 8 years
eight
of my
years, yeah.
experience.
Right. And then you had this chance of working in films and on films, and then you like see your name on the silver screen. Then you realize, okay, this is not for me. So what changed? What changed?
So I used to love creating, like, these abstract things. So whenever I used to do like these title sequences, right? I used
Mm.
to love first watching the movie or the show, whatever I'm doing. I used to watch and I used to take elements, inspiration from them and include them in my title sequences. I
Mm.
used to enjoy that. But somewhere then I realized I I always loved something like creating a workflow, fixing, like, you know uh, how things work. I was always interested in it, and I always like to create something that keeps moving. And I
Mm.
would say, like, this I realized when I was in animation, studying animation also.
Mm.
That point of time I used to be very fascinated with creating rigs in 3D
Mm.
space. We call something
Right.
as rigs. Like when you
Yeah.
create a 3D model, you actually need to rig. Like you create a human, you need to literally put bones and set up that full structure to make the bones move as per you want. That's how the whole animation
Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
right? And I used to enjoy making those rigs, like the complexity.
Mm.
But sadly, at that point of time, it was 2012, none of the institutes used to teach rigging like as a core
Mm.
specialization. And if you want to get into rigging, you need to learn coding and a lot of complexity. And because there was a high bar, like if you see like the way CGI industry is,
Right.
there's so many people getting in. So I couldn't get in, but then I realized that, hey, you know what? I need a change. I don't know what it is. I
Mm.
like creating. I like, making systems,
Mm.
but I'm not so systematic, but I like that, bringing order to chaos, right?
Right.
And that's where I just realized, okay, I need a change.
Mm.
And like, it doesn't matter where it is. Let me see what opportunities come in.
So did this thought that I need a change, did it make you feel sad
I
back
don't
at
think
that
so.
moment? No?
I don't think so because, I felt sad that, hey, what am I doing? Like somewhere at that point of time, I was like, what am I doing with my life?
Mm.
Is it something that I want to do? I questioned myself.
Mm.
And funnily, this was like, one of those days where I had gone to my cousin's wedding, and, I was just sitting in my hometown, like village. And one of the things I liked was there was no building above like two floors there. You could
Mm.
see just the vast sky and the jungle all around, and it was like a typical village house. And I was just sitting outside and thinking, is this something I want to do with my career all along? Like work is good, people are good, everything is good, but is this something that can sustain me? Like, do I see myself doing it for next 20 years, 30 years? I don't know.
Mm. Mm.
And, I just then spoke to my friends and I said, you know what, I'm looking for a change.
Okay.
And I would say I am one of those people who didn't get into UX with a UX portfolio. I didn't have any.
We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. So how did you get into UX if you did not have a portfolio? Let's say, okay, let's put a number. Which year was this?
This is 2019.
Okay, it's very recent now.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is 2019. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I finished my master's in 2016, 2017.
Right.
I was back in Mumbai, and
Right.
2019, like mid of year.
Hmm.
And that time I decided, you know what, I need to change. And that's where my current company comes into picture, right? Like,
Right.
so Divami
Hmm.
I've been part of Divami, I would say, from the time, I think from 2016 itself, because my best friend from college, she joined Divami as a UX designer, Dia, and, she was working. So, and at that point of time, Divami was still a smaller company. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have
Mm-hmm.
grown much, right? But they used to have like these small video recording. So I used to do just like, for like, since Dia was there, so I had like not much
Right.
costing and all. So, I told, she was there. She's been working for like almost three years now. She was a senior designer there, and everything she was handling UX and client. And, you know, at that point of time, they were looking for someone to join, their UI team and
Mm.
something. And I was talking to other friends to see opportunities in companies like Ola, and, where video production was there. I was like, okay, let me see. I can still
Mm.
use my video production skills and motion
Right.
graphic skills to bring in.
Right.
And that's where my friend said, hey, you are my best friend. You can't go to other places. Why can't you come? I was like, yeah, I can still do, let's say UI design, because at that point of time, I said, you know what? I know Photoshop, I know Illustrator, I know image
Yeah.
manipulation, I can do graphic design and all.
Right.
How difficult it is, like, I can learn, right? I can switch. It's just
Mm.
that I need to understand the tool. I need to understand, study a little bit more on, what UI is. And then she spoke to the team. Like, she spoke to Pratima and all, and I spoke to Pratima at that point of time. And what Pratima said that, we like your attitude. We
Mm.
like the approach you take.
Mm.
And don't worry about, not knowing things. We can teach you, but we
Mm.
need the attitude,
Right.
right? That learn and, ready to break your boundaries,
Right.
right? And that's
Absolutely.
where, that's where I said, okay, you know what, I want to work with this company,
Mm.
because it's very hard to find companies that, push you to learn and upskills yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's more than a company, it's a family for us. And
Yeah.
it's, we all have that energy going around, right? And
Yes.
I would say at that point of time, right, I used to, when I decided to change careers, I also started learning by myself, and I used to always watch like Chris Do and Jose Caballero, like
Yeah.
the school.
Yeah.
And I would say, Jose Caballero and Chris Do were like kind of an inspiration, because they spoke about, like, I'd watched their videos like 2016, somewhere around, talking about UX, user experience. So I just had a hint, and I knew
Yeah.
like my friends were doing so, what UX experience is. And I started learning there. And then like I came to Hyderabad,
Right.
and this is my first job in UX. Like I did
Yeah.
do a assignment, I
Yeah.
did do a interview round, but at
Right.
that point of time, my maximum I could do was, from the research to the workflow part. I didn't do wireframes.
Right.
And that's where, like, September of 2019, I
Wow.
landed, like, came in Hyderabad,
Right.
and I started my UX journey.
And look at you now. You're the lead UX of Divami right now. So it's quite a journey. I want to talk about this journey also, how you reached where you are right now. But I want to, before we get into that, now I want to also ask, uh, how has the understanding of UX
Mhm.
for you change over, the span of 3.5 to 4 years now? So how has it changed? So if I ask you, what is UX now? How would you
I
define it?
I would say UX is all around you.
Hmm.
Like, generally, UX in a context, if you say, it's specific to devices, whatever you use, but experience is all around you. It's all defined, like we spoke about, right? It's experience comes from interaction. The first experience human had was human and nature, right? That
Right.
was the first experience. That was the start of evolution,
Yeah.
right? And it's all around us. And now what we are doing is we are defining experience in a very, you know,
Right.
contained scope, to make it more, how do you say, tangible, I would say. And that's where my, like, I've understood, like, and this I like to dwell in little bit of philosophy as well. So my talks are that it's not like all technical and all that,
Totally fine.
right? And I
Totally fine.
like I always liked psychological aspects of things, like how humans behave, why do they behave, why do they think in a certain manner. And that's where I think UX has given me a lot more exposure. And I would say it's just a tiny part of thing that I still know. I
Mm,
think there's a whole wide world, like, there are so many things to understand
absolutely.
and so many things to go in. But I would say whatever we design, right, as
Mm,
designers, you don't realize how much of an impact you are making on humanity, I would say.
mm,
That's where it comes in. Like, people
right.
feel like you are just designing a screen, or you are just designing, a design system. No, you are designing an experience. You are designing a tool or a device for someone to save some amount of their time in life,
Mm,
right?
true.
Why do we design, like, why do we have Uber? Because they saw that people are tired of going out of their home,
Yeah.
looking for a cab, getting rejected, not finding it properly, so they brought it to you.
Yeah.
Instead of you going to cab, the cab comes to
Absolutely.
you. That
Absolutely.
was the idea. That saves your time, that gives you more comfort,
Yeah.
right? So that's where things happen. Like, you need to understand, it's your smallest of things. You never know where it will go. Like,
Mm,
I was just finished this book called Creative Selection by Ken Keshinido. I don't know how, my
okay.
pronunciation might be wrong, but he's he's a he was a engineer with Apple for almost, I think, 8 or 13 years.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
remember the exact time frame. Like, he was the person who created the keypad on iPhone.
Oh, wow.
He made the he made Safari browser. He was part of the team who created Safari browser for the first time.
Mm,
And when I was listening to him, like I listen to more of audiobooks because reading, I know, like I have so many books around me I have bought and kept, but I read 2 pages and I get distracted. That's a bad habit. Right? Like, but when I was listening to him, right, I just like in everyday
Hmm.
commute, I was listening to his story of, coming up with Safari browser in an era where Microsoft was dominating the whole browser
Hmm.
and OS industry. Like, because Internet Explorer was the thing, there was nothing close to it.
Yeah.
Right. So how they went ahead with the open source, code system,
Hmm.
got an inspiration from open source browser, got it in and tried to run it on iOS,
Yeah.
like that whole journey. And when I see that, a company like Apple who created a keyboard, like the QWERTY keyboard, the touch keyboard,
Yeah.
in an era where BlackBerry was the thing,
Was the thing. True. True.
right? Where people without, like, you couldn't imagine a phone without a keypad.
Yeah.
So when iPhone was announced, there was a uproar saying that, hey, it's a $500 phone.
Yeah.
How are people supposed to buy it? It doesn't even have a keypad. What? How do you expect people to pay
Yeah.
for it and
Yeah.
experience? But the day it was launched, there was huge lines all around. And
Yeah.
that's how, like, Steve Jobs, from a business point of view, he had a vision. He knew what he wanted. He was always like clear with his feedbacks and everything.
True.
And when I was listening to his story of keypad, creating that QWERTY keypad and with autocorrect feature. So
Hmm.
that was one of his struggle.
True.
There's one line he said that, I created this, like we created this keyboard and keypad with autocorrect. But the whole inspiration is to give some more time. Like people could do multiple things,
Hmm.
not just, while typing. Like you don't need to. There was, I think, one of
Yeah.
his colleagues who was having a chocolate bar in his hand and he was testing out. It bar was still there,
Hmm.
and but he was still able to type it.
Right.
And today, when we see, we have like so many keypad. Like I don't think so. People can imagine a phone without a keypad.
Yeah.
Like with a keypad, yes,
Yeah.
but with the keypad and the way it works, we don't know. Like there's so much happening behind the scene. People had to go through so many struggles to get that out. It
Yeah.
has become a standard now. And that's how technology, just assimilates into the society. And that's where, like,
That's very well put.
the impact it made, the impact it had put on the whole
Hmm.
technological development. People couldn't imagine a full touchscreen device,
Hmm.
right? At that point of time, like I remember
Yeah.
when iPhone came in, I think iPhone had only one button even from
Yeah.
the start, right? That
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
That point of time, there were still phones in the market, which like Sony Ericsson and they
Yes.
were having touch phones, but they still had like few more buttons,
Yeah.
right? You could still like
Absolutely.
navigate, but iPhone redefined it. See,
Hmm.
people say that, Apple is a luxury brand. It's, yes, that's the way they have established, but their whole culture, like if you look into it, into that book, they define seven like principles they work on. Like the whole culture around in Apple is defined by those.
Hmm.
Like imagine in one of, like, they are so driven towards design. They had, like, in the cafeteria, once someone was they were discussing why the pizza comes in a square box. It's a round pizza.
Right.
And there were people who tried to design a round box with the most optimal like way.
Hmm.
They did that. That's how driven they are. Like that's their company culture.
Right.
That's where we could see a lot of innovations
Hmm.
happening. And the period from, I think, 2007
Oh yeah.
to 2015, I would say it was a peak period in innovation where Apple, every year it was just raising the bar and the other companies were matching up to it,
Hmm.
right?
Uh,
And that's
That's
where,
true.
when you listen to like these big people doing like so many things in so many different ways, you understand, hey, what are we exactly doing?
Yeah. That's so true and very well put. about the experience side of it, user experience side of it. We have discussed quite a lot of things today. And thank you for taking out time for this episode. And it's very interesting. I'm sure students will definitely relate to this because quite a journey you've had from animation to UX, which is very, very different. We don't see many people doing that. And then leaving something behind which you've worked on for 8 years, and then leaving it because it wasn't what you wanted to do, just goes on to prove the point that your interests can change with time, and it is okay to take that shift also, to follow
Ex-
that.
exactly.
So thank you for sharing that story. It's very inspiring and definitely has made me feel a little more passionate about design today, for sure. So thank you for doing that today.
I'm just glad, man. I'm like I'm so honored to be on your show and talk about.